attributes that make you special. Now, let's discuss the uses of agility. A nuclear blast and the subsequent fallout will have many adverse effects on life as we know it. Intensive, prolonged radiation exposure may transform those above ground into decrepit, rotting beings that have lost their ability to reason. They will...
Alright, let's see here. See a lot of a lot of things go wrong in life, for me, I guess. There are a lot of times when I wanted to be able to make something for myself, and I felt independent. The first couple of years, or a few years, I was on my own, and I kind of wanted to be able to create something in my life that would tell the difference between what I've actually done with myself and Because I care about what I do when I'm alone, or what I do when I'm with someone. I start to care about only not that, but in some cases their feelings as well, and maybe I don't do that anymore, I guess. But I know that that might have maybe a little bit to do with the fact that I'm used to being so alone sometimes. Maybe that's the reason why I feel as though I mean, other people feel as though I'm being insensitive. Maybe it's because I don't feel that anymore. Like I don't feel that.
Hey.
A lot of times there are reasons why I
We're not alone. Playing games with me, huh? Think we're safe now? Hey, there you go.
a lot of times there are reasons why I keep to myself, I guess. But I don't sometimes believe that I'm being insensitive. I think that I'm trying to make a joke, and I think a lot of times people don't get that, or maybe they're not laughing because they think it's maybe an insensitive joke.
Only a fucking coward.
I don't exactly believe I'm being insensitive though, and maybe that's enough to say maybe the times when I'm being insensitive, I'm not realizing it because I've thought about this stuff in my head and I don't find it to be. Alright, although there have been a lot of times when I felt as though I was being I had to be insensitive, I guess. I think that a lot of those times I wasn't being exactly insensitive. Shit. I know he's got a freaking thing.
Bullshit. What was that?
Finally. Awesome. That's great. I'm done.
Everything's starting to sound like footsteps these days.
Dance? Let's dance.
I know you're here.
There have been many times when I thought that
Turn up, dead.
that through my own insensitivity I created some sort of like old dominion, I guess, or old like place of respite, I guess. And I think through a lot of times, whenever I was being insensitive, whenever I noticed myself to be insensitive, I would kind of leave things up to chance. I realized that whenever I kind of left things up to chance, my friendships would either not, or they would suffer. Like, I don't know, just thinking about my old stuff and thinking about the stuff that I do now. Oh man, there have been many times when I thought I was saying something funny or saying something that I thought was hilarious, and
No way I could pick this.
okay. Man,
Someone there? Behind us. See you. Guess we share here.
I just wish that people were on my side sometimes, when even though I'm kind of, even though at times I can be hard to manage, I guess. And
There's some here in here, huh? Thought you could hide?
We're not alone.
I think that though I managed to maybe piss off people, I guess. Even though I managed to do that, I also managed to make a better situation for myself, and
There's a classic.
and maybe that situation maybe it deserves delving into, I guess. Should have saved. I didn't though. So. Alright. What I'm getting at is maybe I am being insensitive, but not realizing it. And I think a lot of people can afford to be well dressed and well pampered and all that other different stuff, but I look at the way I've come back to things, and a lot of times I can say that there's a lot of things that I've chose to ignore, I guess. Also, that's the reason why I got those missiles right away. Don't need the silver fork or the cotton yarn. Okay, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take out this gun first, but I'm gonna. Wait, I forgot to get the missile launcher. Oh, did I? No, I didn't. But there have been a lot of times when
Jet jittery. She was right. Gotcha. Everything's
hopefully I'm not being too insensitive. I mean, I've heard things that like people have said that are completely insensitive, but I mean, pretty much realized that there was a boss here. Should have realized that there was a boss here immediately.
Come on now, rookie.
Man, Man, auto saving, yay.
Who's that? Where that little fucker go? Playing games with me, huh?
Oh man,
Show your
alright.
face! Come on! I dare you!
Something.
Oh, fucking shit. Get out of here. Man, alright, if I can get him to come out before I go down, that's what I have to do. Because that could mean that I could get back up and, okay, first off, we gotta get out our missile launcher. Oh, here we go, I have 17 missiles. That is awesome and amazing. Where is he at? Fuck, I'm stuck. I'm stuck.
Where'd they go?
And I'm fucking gone. I need to melt away purified water, malt fruit, and frame fungus, and sweet roll.
Watch out.
5th. Gonna meet hand and hide. Yes, I'm amazing. And now I'm gonna save it. I'm not gonna quick save. I'm gonna save it all the way. And if I run into any more enemies right now, and then I'm gonna need to saving right now. Yay. Alright, she's good. Let's see what kind of stuff we missed. There's probably some sort of item catch probably around here somewhere. There we go. Duct tape, toothpaste, toothbrush. And, toolbox, saw that from the other. Insufficient power. It would seem as though I'm stuck down here, but alright, Molotov cocktail and pulse mine. Pipe revolver rifle, I'm good. Gonna need that right away. Alright, there have been a lot of times when I felt inspired or felt like something was funny or if it was dark. I have a very dark sense of humor. So I assume sometimes that people have the same dark sense of humor that I do, and that's probably where I become insensitive. And maybe that's just because I wanted to grow up like that. I wanted to have that dark sense of humor because maybe like meeting unique people, I guess, that have the same kind of sense of humor that I do. I don't know, maybe I felt like that was the best course of action, I guess. Whenever I felt like something was too stale, I just laugh at it anyways, you know? You know, like maybe it's just not having a lot of like positive role models, I guess. there were a lot of different negative comedians back in the day, and in some cases I really wanted to like be like them, I guess. Then I realized then there were a lot of times when I would go up to someone and I would have sometimes nothing to say. Um, it really stuck with me, and I wanted to come up with stuff to be able to tell my friends or to say something, and we all kind of like grouped together in this like kind of like we wanted, I don't know what we wanted. We wanted to be edgy, I guess, because they were the comedians that got paid the most money, I guess, and maybe in some ways we'd share in that if there was some sort of I don't know. I'm just really witty, I guess. But when it comes to stuff like being sensitive to people's uh, um, sensibilities, I guess I just never I never thought that I had to change myself in order to be able to accommodate someone else's wants and needs, and through that, I think a lot of times. Um, Through that, I think a lot of times I managed to bait people into thinking that that's a lot of times the reasons why I was so awestruck sometimes.
I can carry something if you need me
Maybe that's maybe that's the reason why. I don't know. I'm not trying to be like the edgiest person now. I mean, I've realized that my sensibilities sometimes can get overlooked, or not overlooked, but looked at in weird ways when shit. Um, and the most times I've seen different things that could deem themselves as insensitive. I don't find it I don't find it out of the norm for me to be outspoken about some of those things, and maybe that's one of my follies. Is I'm like I like to be sociable. I like to. It's like a thing I love to do, and
Excuse me. Check your fire. We've got hostiles. Halen?
Watch your back!
there have been a lot of things that I wouldn't normally consider myself as being insensitive, but I guess my sensibilities are kind of untamed. Sorry, some people, and maybe I should look into that. Maybe that's the reason why sometimes I have some outlandish thoughts, and maybe that's also the reason why why in some cases, even when I'm yelled at to stop, like not in arguments, but in conversations, when I'm told to stop, I don't, because I don't think that I'm stepping over anyone's bounds. I'm not. Yeah, I'm not. Doesn't seem to me like sometimes I.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm good. But the more I realize that I'm overstepping my bounds, the more I pull back, and the more I think. I mean, it kind of hurts me a little bit. It doesn't really like hurt me, but it kind of hurts me. I guess hurts my feelings whenever I see someone, and I think that their sensibilities are a little bit more jagged. I guess, and then they're not. Like it kind of like it disappoints me. Like. I mean, I've seen it. Like, I've seen a lot of things that some people haven't seen, and I wasn't sheltered against that stuff. You know, kind of know where, like. I don't know. I kind of know that there's no ultimate savior. I guess it's just it's not depressing at all. It's just, I mean, for me it's freeing, because it makes me realize that yeah, I understand where people's behavior comes from and where it actually happens. And no, there's no such thing as demons, but there are such thing as people. What's the word? Holding down a thought until the thought itself decides to rear itself and make you feel as though you're not like yourself, kind of. And that's where, and it's in the same sense, mental disability comes from, or mental anguish, I guess, that turns into mental disability, or any sort of like messed up thought that you push down, or anything like that, or you see something that's terrible, you don't say anything about it. It can affect your mental capacities, and that's the truth, basically. People sometimes think that there's never an empty thought in their mind, or never a boring thought in their mind, and that's just completely untrue. So, like, I think most of the time when I see that kind of behavior, I guess, or when I see the behavior in other people, I'm like I stop them sometimes, and I kind of reevaluate the situation. The more I realize, though, that I think just events happen because people plan them, and people think that they're being stupid or funny or dumb. They're basically just planning things out to spite someone, or to think that somehow they're just being what's the word, Be smart, basically.
That's it.
I did not see those other two. That's crazy. Yes. The more I find that that I find solace in some people's actions, the way that they do things, how they do things, or maybe just the way that they decide to do things, or decide to present themselves. I've seen a lot of stupid shit, and I kind of want to like let it go, you know, like just kind of like that, I guess. And that's where I think my biggest like flaw, I guess, is.
Seems like they have
And
enough sense to
I guess when you think about it, though, whatever pushes you to become that certain person, whenever you're being a certain person, whenever you're trying to understand that your being is at a standstill, or I mean, maybe that's the point, I guess, of what I think is returnable. I mean, or like you're being able to, you can come back from that point with a better schematic of what your entire mental capacities is like, and maybe that's the reason why I think sometimes that there's 7. We are gonna kill some super mutants, and I'm not gonna go up here. I'm gonna go down here. The more I see a better situation, though, I mean, I think the more lighthearted I get. So, and maybe that's probably a messed up part about me, that kind of just, when I'm stressed out, I'm like dark, and when I'm not stressed out, I'm just like lighthearted, I guess. I'm not.
Yes.
I guess I just built a. Yeah, maybe we should leave on this point. Just gonna say that out loud. Alright, time to go now. I think there are a lot of times when people don't see the difference they're making, or when people do see the difference they're making and they're just happy with it, even though sometimes the difference they're making is just barely anything. I mean, when I'm stressed out, there's no like uh, there's no like pushing back at me, I guess. I mean, and I don't think that people really understand where I'm coming from sometimes, and I think that's, if they had an idea of what I actually go through on a daily basis, they'd probably be like, well, I mean, obviously that dude's gonna kind of act out sometimes and say things that are part of the norm. So, but they don't have any form of reference, I guess, against my entire life, and the reason why, I mean, I say like weird, stupid things, and I think a lot of times though, I've seen the bigger parts of what I want for myself, I think, and I think that as I move towards what I really want to do or how I really want to do it, the more that situation becomes clear to me, the more I see son of a bitch, I got, there you go. The more I think that situation becomes clear to me, the more I'm taken aback by situations that are out of my control, and I think the more that I see that, the more obviously I'm stressed out. But I think that's the reason why I focus on the negative sometimes, is because I don't want to give that negative space or that negative connotation a way to get into my life that that I find damning, I guess, and the more that I see that behavior, the more that I get tired of it, and I kind of move on to a different mode of thinking, as in like just ignore the shit out of that, basically. So yeah, that's basically the reason why I see myself not only making differences, or making a difference in my own life, as well as trying to do that in others. The more I see myself not believing the hype or the bullshit or the things, I guess, that people say, that's just like, oh my god, this thing is so amazing, it's so great, and I mean, they're not experienced in the forte, so it's like, you know, just it adds to my skepticism, basically, and being stressed out adds to my skepticism, and when I get skeptic, when I'm skeptic, it I can, I guess, pull at people's heartstrings, I guess, on not on purpose, but um but yeah, the stress adds to my skepticism. The more I see someone do something over and over and over again, that's just damning for themselves, the more I basically am conscious of their unwavering bullshit, you know, their unwavering bullshit, and the more I see it every day, the more I pay attention to every detail, and try to pick it apart, and basically just tell them that they're not thinking the way that they're supposed to be thinking. They're just doing something that they think is fun, and that's where most of it comes from. So, and the more they do it, the less I pretty much care, I guess. So that's where it all happens. I've like within my own relationships, I've seen people like basically in the beginning of relationships, when things are just getting ready to start, and you get nervous, and you, it's things like that to take the edge off. Some women have sex with other dudes, and that's much of a practice that I kind of pushed away against, because I think that a lot of times the being nervous around someone is completely natural, and it's not something that you want to push back against, because eventually you'll find out that that person themselves you're not actually attracted to. You were just attracted to the moment that that person decided to become a part of you. And what else? I noticed that a lot of times people can they burn the algorithm that makes for a good relationship, and not only seeing that, they start to realize that they're not pushing. It's not pushing back at one another that makes them attracted to one another. It's the fact that they feel overjoyed or overzealous or some sort of like elated emotion when it comes to not doing something that they usually do. like canceling plans and realizing that you can relax. Basically, it becomes a thrill-seeking environment, and that's kind of based on insecurities that show up in everyday life that can basically turn a person from what they want to be and how they want to be it, or whether they plan to be something, and then turn them into the person who pushes back at everything and everyone just because it makes them feel good. So, in retrospect, it's not the relationship they're actually involved in. It's not the thing they're actually involved in. It's not the thing they really want to be a part of. It's just the situations that arise, that happen, that they get a rise out of, or their heart starts to pulse or pound really fast, and that's what they live for, sort of. I've noticed that most of the time, whenever those situations start to happen or arise, I start to lose interest, because that person is not involved or liking me. They're liking the situation. They like the thing that gives them the rush, and they're not wanting to build on anything or share anything or help with emotions or do anything with emotions. They just want to argue or fight or bicker, or that just gives them the stuff or the courage they need to be able to go another day. And that usually happens when you're young. You know, it's okay. Like there's a happens when you're young. Like you're like yeah, like up to like 40, I think, when it stops, because you start to realize that when you come down off of that high, because it's a high, basically, just like any other, and it's a disease, basically, because people are thrill seekers and emotional balls of fire, basically. I realized that my mom and my dad were coming down from the thrill of living life in a place where everything happened at once, and they shared in that. You know, like they shared in so many things, and no matter what they believed in or said or had, I guess, the more they bickered, the more they fought, the more they realized they weren't enough for each other. And because the older they got, they realized that they can't bicker and fight in front of everyone, because it's a bad example to set around. You know, it's just stupid, because people themselves aren't just balls of emotion or anything like that, and becoming that sort of crazy thing or thing that you fear or like because you fear, or like because you don't fear, or say you don't fear it because of some sort of inconsistency in your upbringing, or anything like that, or what you felt as though was an inconsistency in your upbringing because you saw it around you and you didn't see it in your life. I think what you need to realize, or what people need to realize, is if you're not eventually just conversating with each other, if you're not eventually just being the person that you really need to be in order to be able to support your significant other, then you don't need to be together. Like, because of my dad not being able to get a job, and my mom realizing that he was never going to stay with one job, he just was looking for the experience, and eventually he'd grow old, and that experience wouldn't even matter in some ways. It made me realize that maybe staying with a job, and now it makes me realize that maybe staying with a job and keeping it for a while. And getting out of, and realizing that if you're not going to be a statistic, you have to go against what the statistic actually means. Like you don't have to go against, technically, you don't have to be like, don't be a number sort of thing. But in order to be able to suggest a fuller response and a fuller and a more realistic tone, to be able to convey ideas and thoughts, ideas and motives. You have to realize that there are people out there that can help, and if for some reason you feel as though you're going through stupid bullshit, and what can I say? My friends are really dumb. So, and in some cases, they're not my friends anymore. That doesn't mean that I hate them. Doesn't mean that I don't like them. They're just the people that they've become. Weren't the people that I envisioned them to, or the thing that I saw whenever I first met them, you know? And now they're just roommates, so. So I think the biggest thing you need to worry about whenever you're actually realizing something or realizing a thing is you don't want to be like the people that are arguing around you. You don't want to be like the dude who hits his wife and girlfriend, and just because she's drunk and doesn't remember it, you're gonna just realize something and say, oh, we can still move on this and realize our goals in life. But no, that's not true. And eventually people get found out to be complete and utter assholes. And I think there's a lot of times where people lose their minds. And sometimes they're planning that from the beginning. Sometimes they're not planning that from the beginning. Sometimes it's just a thought and they don't realize it, or they just think that, oh, that thought's a passing, fading thought and it's not going to come up. But you have to realize if things aren't addressed, if thoughts and functions and feelings and a whole bunch of different other things aren't addressed, then those things blow up. And you, I mean, especially if you're doing the same mode over and over again, or the same work job over and over again, you're not going to realize a certain specific time area or time section, because you start to realize that the more emotion that's spread around, the less you actually become a unit, and the more you realize that those things were meant for you and not for the other person, the more you have to sit and realize that that it's just using now. That people are just using each other now in that situation, and I don't want to be used or have or use someone. And that's why I left my ex-wife. That's why I left my girlfriend. who 4 years was just... That's why I left my other girlfriend. And that's why I never really had that much of a relationship clause sometimes, because if the relationship comes of it, then that's cool, and that's great. But if you're not looking for that relationship, and it doesn't come, then you won't be let down, you know? And I know people think that that there's some sort of realization out there that they have to create, or they have to get themselves back in order. But in order for them to realize some sort of professional goal, they have to be not like everyone else, but they have to be structurally and mentally sound. The more you realize certain goals for yourself, the more you push towards certain instances and don't realize the certain goals that you really need, or realize the certain people that you really need in your life, or even just to realize that you don't need anyone. The more you're going to slip back down into that hole, and you're going to be like, wow, I mean, why am I here? You know, why am I even doing this? Why am I even realizing this sort of thing, and realizing a sort of goal that just pushes you and creates that distance from someone who is just doing wrong to you, is better than arguing for hours and hours on end for months and months, and realizing that if they're using you, then just let them go. If they're using you, then just realize that's all they'll do. And if you're using them, then try to change yourself to make sure that you're not just using them, but you're having a mutual trade, or a mutual bond, or a mutual anything on any sort of level that could benefit the relationship, or any positive level that could benefit the relationship. And maybe people use that as well as an excuse to say that they're having bonds and having positive relationships. But if there's something wrong going on in your life, and you're or there's something that you feel as though is wrong, and you should be thinking something differently, and you're not, then maybe you need counseling. Maybe you need therapy. Maybe you need any sort of guidance to be able to say, you know what, I need a better voice in my head, because the voices that I have in my own head right now, the things that I'm promoting, aren't the reason why I'm building on anything, aren't the reason why I'm trying to build a certain professional degree, or a realization of fact that people don't just become something. They have been working at it for a long time, and if they don't work at it for a long time, then they're going to realize that they shouldn't have done the things in the past to be able to do different things. But the more they practice at it, the more they try at it, the better they get at it, because the brain can rewire itself in so many different ways. And if all we do is sit down and see those ways and never do anything about them, then it's just realizing that there's a problem. And if you just realize that it'll solve itself, think that the universe will solve it for you. Realize that the universe will destroy your ever-loving life. Everything about you, everything that you've ever loved. The universe will do that before it is ever going to help you in certain areas. And those are the rules of whatever universe people are living in. Is it will tear everything apart. And it will never make you the same ever again, because it just, the universe, there's a black hole, or a black mass, I believe. And the more we're thrown about in our relationships, just like we're being thrown about in the universe, the more we're thrown about in our relationships, the more I think that those relationships cease to be. The more the silence seems to take over, and the more that silence seems to eat and desperately push at you, and eventually there will be a virus that basically mimics that, because aren't reality. They don't make reality, but they guide it. They guide reality. Thoughts guide reality into what we believe is the pattern of which life actually existed a long time ago. So I think all these fiction and different things like that are different clues to different things that have actually existed or actually happened, maybe millions of years ago, that we have no record for. The biggest thoughts that I think are the best ways to convey emotion, or get out of something, or get into something that you want to get into, is to start trying. And this much is what I want to get into, as much as I've tried. People have to realize that it doesn't matter about the people that are like, hey, you're not doing well, or the people the people say that oh my God, you're just a terrible person, you're a terrorist. I don't believe that shit. I don't believe that for 1 second. I don't believe that I'm a terrorist that just walks around and says stuff. That's not even what terrorism is. And I think with the way that people perceive something in a certain way, they're trying to associate something so they can be appalled, or have the drive to be able to create what they believe is change in a situation where they feel completely and utterly just helpless. And within that situation, people don't understand that the reason you feel helpless or fearful or have fear in that certain sense is because it is what drives you in some cases. It is what makes you do certain things. And if people would just promote themselves, and in certain ways be able to realize certain goals that are positive and not completely and utterly just false and negative. That, oh, it's the only chance I have. It's like, no, you'll get other chances if you turn that one stupid chance down. You know? Like, you'll get other chances, obviously. People will realize that the way you feel confident, how's it going, viewer? If you want to message me, you can. If you feel confident in a certain situation, though, people will realize that, and they'll trust you more. Like, the way that you have a certain air about you, and within that certain air, or that certain situation, that certain climbing thing, if you realize that certain situation that you believe in, if you do realize that, then you'll understand that people should realize that the basic wants and needs of all of us, the basic wants and direction that we strive to go in, the basic realization of thoughts and the process of thoughts. To reinvent that certain clause or that certain situation is to practice. Is to reinvent yourself is to practice. Okay? To be able to realize that. And I'm not saying that I believe in a whole bunch of fiction or anything like that. I'm just saying that through a certain number of things, people have taken certain details out or put certain details in to things that are in some ways reminiscent of something that happened in real life, and realizations of that are the cornerstone of what makes something good or something great or something true, basically inspiring something fiction, and that fiction shedding a light on what is actually real. That's, in a way, is the reason why I love fiction, and the reason why I love the fiction itself is because it takes a new light or a new approach of seeing something in a new direction and saying that the causation of something isn't directly affected by something that is that reason, because so many things could have happened and then that thing happened that could have made that person or that thing or whatever someone was planning for, how they were planning for it. It didn't make them infamous. It doesn't make them infamous. What makes them infamous is that the camera is on. What makes that thing infamous or that situation infamous is that the camera is panning around while that thing is actually happening. So the realization of fact is that as you realize certain things that are happening in real life, if you were to take that thing out of your brain and realize what could have happened or how it could have happened, it opens a realm of new possibilities and ways to be able to stop things that eventually might happen or eventually could happen if the plans aren't made to be able to stop that. Like, say, the earthquake in Mexico. If we had taken a standpoint in what our own government was and realized that other governments need help in certain situations, and the fact that we aren't the only ones that get earthquakes, I mean, we would have been able to get aid there probably faster, or we've been able to do something there that would have helped. But since the fact of the matter is, there are a lot of people that do gang violence and try to bribe a bunch of cops and try to do something terrible. What I think the whole situation about it is it's not the fact that they're doing something. It's the fact that it's not the fact that they're doing something or saying something. It's the fact that their own recollection of how they believe something happened, or their own recollection of how they think situations go about or situations happen is skewed by their own experience and what they believe is the experience that they want to have up to the experience that they are having at the moment. And the thought of that experience not going the way that they planned is their own worldview. And that I think in some ways is the political span of so many countries, including our own. Now, granted, in a contract, if something happens and you're not allowed to do something, the basic construct of that is your contractors aren't doing the right things that they're doing. But it's taking that instance and saying that there are so many things messed up with the world, and just because of your own experience with the world that you've lived in, maybe you just need to get a new manager. You know? Take that concept and relay it to other parts of your life. Maybe you just need to get new things. Maybe you just need to realize that no, not every couch is comfortable. No, maybe you just need to realize that maybe if your bed's busted out, then you should probably get a new one. And maybe a smaller one, because you don't need that much room. And maybe you need to get a freaking chair to be able to sit in front of the TV instead of actually looking off to the side and trying to catty corner it. So I'm talking about my life. You are your own one-person bomb squad. You can defuse situations that happen. You can make sure that people have the best experience possible. And you can make sure that people themselves don't find you to be darker than most, or dark sense of humor than most. The situations that go through your mind aren't the situations that are happening in real life, in some cases. And the more research you do and the more practice you have at it, the more you'll be able to find out what is the actual world, whatever view, I guess, what people are actually saying they're doing. Because it's in actuality, if you're not doing anything, then it really doesn't matter. If you're doing something, then it kind of still doesn't matter. No matter how professional you believe or think you are, people will always find ways to poke holes in it. And people will always be able to push some sort of agenda onto you or to anyone else, to be able to try to push what they're thinking and to be able to try to push what they're doing. And in some cases that's happened to me because of the way that people have kind of treated me on the message board. But I'm going to keep it open anyways, because the more I think about people around me, the more that I see myself reasoning something, the more that I'll want to see people to be able to react to that and also have real-time chat as well. Being yourself is the distance from the thing you want and the thing that's hurting you at the moment. Understanding and practicing is getting to know that distance and getting to know how far that distance is. Applying what you learned and what you know is realizing your goals and getting there today. And realizing the fact that there are people out there that can help you along your journey, or whatever kind of thing you want to call it, because I know that some people don't like the fact that it's a journey or any whatever. Your life. Realize that the things we make, the things we decide, the things we know can affect and do affect everything around us. And maybe I shouldn't be so dark. Have a good day. And thank you for listening if you ever do.